And a very good day to you. Thanks for looking in. Welcome to the Blue Files. My name is Anwar Knight, your host. This web series is about highlighting some intriguing stories from around the world that all involve our changing planet. In many cases, typically falls off the radar when it comes to mainstream media. So we're welcoming you to another brand new episode. And to join me with this, my co-host from the West Coast, Christina Stevens. Really excited about today's show, Christina. Lots to talk about.
Absolutely, and some major steps forward for the environment, which is always nice.
It is nice, and that's a part of this, this conversation on this series. There are many dark clouds, but there's some bright sunny spots. So let's get right to it. We're going to head down to the Southwest Pacific, to the island country of New Zealand. They are now adding to that long list of nations that are starting to push out single-use plastic.
They are. New Zealand, you might be surprised, is actually a terrible polluter of single-use plastics. I mean, they kind of have this image, not unlike Canada, this pristine, green, perfection, all natural stuff. But in fact, New Zealand is one of the top 10 per capita producers of landfill waste in the world. The country is trying to ditch that image, that problem, and so they're banning single-use plastics by 2025. That can't be every single thing, but this covers, the vast majority, from bags to, they call them earbuds or cotton buds, we probably call them Q-tips, all the different plastic cutlery, plastic plates, bowls, even straws and fruit labels, other packaging. Their environment minister gives us a good idea of just how serious of a problem it is right now. Every day, New Zealanders throw away almost 160 grams. That's 1/3 of a pound of plastic waste per person. And I think about how light a lot of plastics are. So that's a lot when you kind of gather it together, right? So these bans, of course, people have to adjust. They have to find alternatives. So they'll be phased in starting in 2022 and aiming to get rid of all these things by 2025. And then that way, as they put it, they'll be living up to their clean green reputation. There are estimates that this could remove more than 2 billion single-use plastic items from the country's landfill and from the environment every single year. So it's a huge step forward. I mean, they've already, banned plastic bags, which so many places have, whether it's, federally or locally. So many, cities in Canada have done that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a huge step forward. There are critics, of course. They say that the big miss here is commercial users. And one example is that the construction and demolition industry actually accounts for about half of all the landfill in New Zealand. So they're saying, okay, you're looking at all these daily stuff, and that's great, of course, but you're missing another big opportunity to cut down on this kind of stuff, So, and of course, there are other things on the list that they still want to phase in later when they have more alternatives.
Yeah, and I think the commercial side is a real juggernaut for many nations, municipalities. It's just so big to tackle, and of course no one wants to be responsible for closing an industry. If they say, well, we can't do that in 2 years, we're going to have to shut down. So maybe this is the easier path to it. As you mentioned, Canada is they're promising by the end of this year. It may be adjusted because of COVID, I'm not quite sure, but China, which is the largest country that has agreed to do this. But it's interesting because you're right. New Zealand is in the top 20 for being the greenest countries, but they do have a waste management problem. There's no doubt about it. And you mentioned the weight on just the plastics. I was doing some calculations. The average Canadian, this is not just plastic, but waste overall, produces about 2,100 pounds of waste a year. But in New Zealand, it's over 7,000 pounds. I mean, that is just, you can't wrap your head around it. So they do have a problem.
Much.
So this is,
yeah.
It makes you wonder, right? But maybe this is the step forward of saying, hey, we need to watch what we're doing here. And it does start on the consumer level, and that will hopefully, it'll be a ripple effect into the commercial enterprise. But one thing that I really like about this, Christina, is that the government is also allowing a fund, I think it was $50 million, and that is to inspire, businesses to think outside of the box, become problem solvers. And that's a win-win because it will also create jobs, competition, and all of it supports sustainability. So I was really pleased to see that. It's not just about we're now going to ban this and it's done, but we're also saying, look, here's $50 million. Let's get together, get some brilliant thinking going on and how we can adapt alternatives. So I thought, to me, that was one of the real neat parts of this new initiative.
It is. It's about solutions because a lot of people, immediately, what am I going to do? In Canada, for example, you mentioned a ban on, there's basically a half dozen things by 2022. One of them is the six-pack rings, the plastic rings. They're so not horrible just for the environment, but for wildlife. So a lot of people, their instant reaction is like, what am I going to do? How are we going to hold those drinks together? So finding these alternatives that are viable, that are useful, is a big part of it, right? As far as getting everyone on board. And you mentioned COVID. It has slowed things down. It's slowed down a lot of legislation in a lot of the U.S. states that have, that they were going to enact all these things. They put it on pause. Plus, it's added plastic. You think of all the plastic gloves and the little hand sanitizer bottles. I mean, I'm so bad about that because I have a little bottle everywhere, right? And so you've got all these little bottles instead of just one big one. So it's definitely made it tougher. But it is impressive how far everyone is going with this at this point. And, so many places, just the plastic bags alone, so many cities in Canada have banned those.
The reality is, the world produces about 300 million tons of plastic a year. So it is going to be a hard adjustment, but a necessary one. It really is one of the most significant problems that we are dealing with when it comes to pollution on our planet. So that is, I think, a great strategy. And I look forward to following, this story along here, especially when we talk about, being creative and thinking outside of the box, because all you need is one company in the world to say, hey, we have the perfect solution, and then everybody hops on board and it just gets better and better. And maybe our next story will be a part of that. And this is about vegan sneakers. We're going to put our best foot forward as we discover these new type of shoes. This could give the sneaker industry a much needed bounce into sustainability. Now, the brand is called Nuvens, and they are
a bounce. I caught that. The bounce into
It took me quite a while.
Yeah, that was good.
I'm glad you got it. Thank you. Yes, there you
Especially
go.
for basketball shoes.
So this brand of shoes is called Nuvens. Whether you use it for basketball or not, I guess it's up to the consumer. But they are partially made, get this, from recycled party balloons along with other sustainable materials. So we'll show some images here. Now, the new line was fully funded through a crowdsourced platform. The company is called Undo for Tomorrow. They're based in Brazil. They have partnered, though, with a fair trade factory, and shipments to customers are starting this month. And the uppers of these shoes are a vegan suede, which is created from recycled plastic bottles. The outsole is constructed using the party balloons and leftover tire pieces. And, it's perhaps no surprise how big the running shoe / sneaker industry is. Some of the most recognizable brands in the world are on our feet, right? For those who do into it. To be honest, I'm pretty cheap. I will not spend $80, $150, on a pair of sneakers.
$80, $150, $250. Come on. Where are you shopping?
Oh, my heart. My heart! Oh my goodness! Stop!
Breathe.
But you're right. Breathe. Many people do. There's no doubt about it. So it's really interesting though because, yes, we're all aware of the brands, and we're getting into that industry because there's 24 billion pairs of shoes that are created each year. Majority of that is for the sneaker running shoe segment. But what people may not be aware of, that the sneaker production is a huge contributor to CO2 emissions.
Okay.
This is fascinating. When you break down the numbers, for comparison, air travel is about 2.5% in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, but studies indicate that the sneaker production is 1.4%. So it's almost half of that. So it needs to change. And some other industry experts say that the footwear industry is about a decade behind. when it comes to human rights and environmental changes. So I think this is really exciting news.
It is, and it also, when you think of the balloons themselves, right? The what they're made out of. When you're when we were kids, I mean, the more balloons, the better. It didn't matter what happened to them after. And now, people let them fly away, and then that's bad for birds and other when they land. A lot of times they've got a string or a ribbon attached that they get all wrapped in. The Mylar ones, they're saying you can reuse them, and that's the best way.
Yeah.
Those ones, but to have enough to actually produce. It's hard to picture having enough, and that they separate them out, like to get all these balloons and separate them out to go into these running shoe soles. But I like all the colorful bits.
Yeah, and I wonder, how do they do that? How are they acquiring the balloons? I don't have that information, but yeah, that is interesting. Maybe it's even, offcast from the industry in itself, those who make balloons, because they do a test before they package it. If it has a hole, obviously it's no good. But I think that this is really a good shakeup in the industry. And it again, because it was crowdsourced, the funding came from the general public. There's an appetite for this. It right now is specifically going to be into Central America, and then they're going to expand into North America. I mean, you can buy it online right now. But this is going to be maybe not the solution, but a solution that will spur other ideas. That what is possible, because let's face it. We really drive the industry. We're the ones who want to, we've seen news reports, people stand in line overnight when a new pair of major brand label from maybe endorsed by a basketball player, what have you, I got to be one of the first to own those pairs of sneakers. If we say, hey, we're only going to buy it if it is 70% sustainable sourced, they're going to change. So I think the onus is on us. But I was very excited about this.
You know what I think? A lot of it, they have to be cool. So, you mentioned the celebrity endorsements, right? So if we get to that stage in society, and I think, to be honest, the younger generations are quite a bit further ahead, where it's cool to be, environmental and to buy things that are sustainable. So instead of, a certain swoosh, they'll look for symbols like these colorful soles that show them this is environmental, and some, big star will endorse them. And then that way all the other kids at school will know that they spent the money on these particular shoes. And that'll help, I think, when that's sort of defined instead of a certain brand just because it's the brand, but the brand because it's sustainable, that people want to buy them,
I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a great way to look at it. At the end of the day, let's get some of these big, heavy hitters in terms of the famous people to say, hey, I want to now be attached, and I think it's starting to happen, but I want to attach my brand to something that is eco-friendly, that is sustainable, and that will go a long way on getting the fans or the public to say, I want to now be a part of that brand. So I think you're right. I thought it was exciting. I thought the look of the shoes were pretty cool. I'm not very physically fit. I don't do a lot of sports per se, but
for kicking around
that'll
town.
be the next thing.
Just for kicking around town, you're
there
fine.
It is. As long as I'm looking good, that's all right. That's all I need. So anyway, vegan shoes, really cool stuff. Let's wrap it up with a story of resilience, something that nature, in my opinion, always seems to provide. But I thought this was really cool. It's a look at some of the newest and officially cataloged species on the planet, and there are many.
They're always changing. We're losing some species, we're gaining others. I mean, sadly, right now, they're saying we're losing species at a rate of 1,000 to 10,000 times the natural rate. But right now we're talking about new species. There are so many. First, I want to touch on the definition, because I always get confused, species and breed and this. So there are a number of definitions. None is exactly perfect, but the most commonly used one is interbreeding. So a species is a group within which two individuals can breed and produce a fertile offspring. So on that note, of course, it doesn't work with everything, including some insects. So we're starting with spiders, Greta spiders from Madagascar and Mayotte, and they're called Thunberga. Greta Thunberga. Are you going along with me? So they're a type of huntsman spider, and they were named last year after the environmentalist. And when they started, they're like, great, new single species, but now there's like 26 new species of these Greta spiders. So that's very cool, and they're predators. They're ambush predators, they call them, which sounds a little scary. I'm glad they're not here in Canada. And the females have a lot of scars because they're the fangs of the males as they grab them when they mate.
Right.
So yes, they sound a little scary, these spiders, but
And you have another one. Now, this is an ant, which I thought was really cool.
an ant from Ecuador. Now I'm going to try to say the species name. Bear with me here. Strumigenus airsday. So this is a species, and kind of what makes it interesting again is actually the naming twist. It's very current because it's named after an artist, Jeremy Ayres, who was quite big, kind of a bit back in the day. So here's the thing. Usually, if they're named after a female, it ends with AE, the name. If it's after a male, it ends in I. So with this particular artist, it was more fluid, gender neutral. So it's they, Ayres they. It's the first time they've used this kind of a new naming convention. So it's just the one single ant. It's in a tropical forest in northern Ecuador, but they haven't found more of them. So they think it's very rare that they've lucked out. They found this, and it has like these crazy, again, kind of creepy spring-loaded jaws. Another little celebrity touch, although it was found and cataloged by a taxonomist at Yale University. There was also some writing done with help from Michael Stipe of R.E.M. So there's some glamour to this new ant.
Well, I think that's what really makes it so much more intriguing, right? Because there's a connection now with who somebody can relate to, right? And I think this is one way of nurturing nature, getting people to say, oh, well, what is that? That's named after who? Well, at the very least, let me see what it looks like. And we're showing that now. But, I'm not even going to try to say the actual name. I just call it the trapjaw ant. But what I found interesting is that the mechanism of the trapjaw, scientists believe it's the fastest movement in any living creature. The mechanism of it closing, which it's just an ant, but think about that. That is amazing. And how they're able to assess that, it goes on beyond another level. But that is one of the other creatures they have noted. And we should point out, some experts say that, there's literally hundreds of thousands of species that are yet to be identified, found. And I find that very inspiring because I think that it shows that there is hope, that there are creatures secretly thriving, so that means, if we change course and get back to nurturing nature, helping the planet, she will do her part. Right? So that's what I find really inspiring about this. But do you have one more? Can we wrap up with one more?
We have one more, and that was actually the perfect segue to this because this one more was only found through genome sequencing. It was kind of a secret. You can't actually see that it's a different species, and it's a type of bumblebee. I mean, we've talked a lot about bees and their future and survival, so this is a bumblebee. This one, again, is sort of that secret hidden species, so they named it Bombus incognitus. Right, so it's incognito.
That's very good, Christine.
I've been practicing. There are, some 250 species of bumblebee. So these are bumblebees studied in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and they're collecting hundreds. And they were actually more working on cataloging them when they figured out, actually, we have something new here. This is different, and it looks exactly like another species, which I'm not going to pronounce, but basically exactly like another bumblebee. But they found out that, here's a whole new species. So now they're thinking, how many other bumblebee species are there that we don't even realize yet, but they'll find when they keep working on it. Yeah, it's surprising how many new species are developing or just being discovered constantly. And of course, that's all about survival in the world, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this new bumblebee, it wasn't found, in some far-off rainforest where, we've explored virtually every corner of our planet, but this was in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, which I find intriguing. It's here in North American soil, so it shows you again that nature in some manner is thriving, and I just find it really positive. Now, whether or not some scientists believe that there could be some changes because of climate change in terms of new species are literally being born because they're adapting to new environments. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. And maybe that'll, come in its course in the next 10 years. But it's exciting to see that there are so many new species that are being discovered still, being cataloged and identified, and hopefully that'll add to the balancing act, as you mentioned, of others that are just disappearing.
And I'm really relieved that, when you talk about the one that's sort of close to home is the bumblebee. It's not, a spring-loaded jaw ant or a predatory spider. I'm happy that it's the bumblebee that's the closest to home, But yeah, these things are always evolving, changing. So it's not surprising every year. There are a number of new species. Again, the hope is that that continues and quite not so many drop off at the other end,
Right.
A little side note, I always find it interesting when we're talking about bigger animals and which ones are going, extinct and the species are disappearing. I always notice there's a lot more publicity for the cute ones. Ones that have like cute little fuzzy animals, not whatever toad is slowly disappearing. People are like, oh yeah, whatever. The ones that are cute get a lot of publicity.
Right.
So it's nice that we're giving some chat to spiders and ants and bumblebees, giving them the attention they need.
Yes, and there's truth in what you say. There's always some animals that become the ambassadors or the poster animal, if you will, the polar bears and the whales. And, of course, very important, but every single creature is there for a reason. It's that eco-balance, everything is working in itself. So they all have a role to play, and maybe that's our job then to highlight some of those. So maybe we'll do this now and then, is update our new species tally here on the Blue Files.
Sounds
Sound
like
good?
a perfect plan.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you, Christina. Always appreciate your time and your insight, and I hope you can join us again on Friday on the Here and There Show.
Absolutely. Fewer creepy crawlies, though, right?
Yes, I guarantee it.
Okay.
I guarantee
I'll be
it.
there then.
Now I'll have to look for a trap jaw ant or something that looks like it. For those who are not familiar, we stream live on my Facebook page every Friday at 1 o'clock. It's called Here and There. It's about green spaces, about people, about community, and it's all live, so we hope you can join us. Listen, if you enjoyed this episode, please help support it. Like and subscribe to our channel. Always open to your comments. And if you're watching the program on Facebook, like, love, share, and please follow the page. We are at this real crucial time for our planet, and our goal is to inform and inspire action. Get people, as many people as we can, to get together and be a part of the change that needs to happen. Until next time, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great day, and we'll see you here on the Blue Files, the extended edition.